take a close look at these visuals, the bright arcade quality colour depth, the massive fighting game sprites, the fluid cinematic character animations. If you caught a quick glimpse of these on a CRT television back in the day, you would have sworn you were looking at a 16-bit Sega Mega Drive, but it's not. This is running on an 8-bit console from 1985. Today, we're turning our attention to a machine that dominated the playgrounds of the UK, Europe and Brazil, the good old Sega Master System, and the 16 games that completely broke the boundaries of 8-bit computing. While the rest of the world was looking at the flat, restrictive colours of the NES, Master System owners were treated to a machine that could pump out a massive 32 colours on screen at the exact same time. But despite having a superior colour palette, the Master System had an incredibly tough hill to climb. It lacked native hardware support for things like split-screen scrolling, and Sega cartridges didn't use advanced helper chips like the Nintendo's MMC mappers to boost the system's power. That meant if a game wanted to look next generation, it couldn't rely on hardware tricks. The programmers had to manually calculate every single visual exploit using raw assembly code on the Zilog Z80 processor. Today, we're diving into the absolute peak of the Master System's library, from the impossible 16-bit downports that defies logic to the visual masterpieces created by Sega and brilliant late-era developers in the mid-90s who refused to let this legendary console go quietly into the night. Grab your control pads and boot up the system. These are 16 games that pushed the Sega Master System to its absolute limit. Let's look under the hood. So let's kick things off with a classic. Sega's 1987 port of Outrun is a triumph of pure, raw, mathematical calculations over rigid hardware design. The Master System has absolutely no native hardware capability to handle 3D perspective or scaling roads. It is strictly a flat 2D tile machine. To simulate driving a Ferrari Testarossa down a highway at 200 miles per hour, the programmers wrote a software engine that recalculates and shifts the horizontal line segments of the road on every single screen refresh. The result is a remarkably fluid, high-speed pseudo 3D scaling illusion as the road dips, bends and crests over rolling hills. Paired with those iconic beachside palm trees and a brilliant chiptune rendition of Passing Breeze, it was an engineering marvel for 1987. In 1987, Sega released Phantasy Star, an RPG so massive it required a record-breaking 4 megabit cartridge, which was an astronomical amount of memory for the time, and Sega put every single bit of that storage to work. While contemporary 8-bit RPGs like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest relied on flat, static text-heavy menus, Phantasy Star shocked the world with fully animated, fluid, first-person 3D dungeon crawling. Walking through these stone and metallic labyrinth corridors felt incredibly smooth, a genuine generational leap forward that left the NES in the dust. Combine that with massive fully animated enemy sprites during combat and you have a game that single-handedly redefined what 8-bit consoles were capable of visualising. In 1991, Sega didn't just lazily downscale the 16-bit Mega Drive masterpiece. They hired Yuzo Koshiro's development studio, Ancient, to build a completely bespoke 8-bit masterpiece. The result is arguably one of the finest platformers on the system. Because the Master System can output 32 vibrant colours simultaneously from a palette of 64, areas like Green Hill Zone look shockingly close to their 16-bit big brother. Ancient completely mastered the Z80 CPU, creating unique stage mechanics, beautifully responsive rolling physics, and a fast, buttery smooth, horizontal scrolling engine that never hit a hitch. It gave Sega kids an immense sense of playground pride, proving our 8-bit console could handle gaming's biggest icon with absolute style. When Sega brought Irem's legendary arcade shooter R-Type to the Master System in 1988, they ran into a massive wall. The iconic Level 1 boss Krell was far too large to be rendered using standard hardware sprites without completely crashing the machine. So Sega's programmers pulled off a legendary heist. They didn't build the boss out of sprites, they built him entirely out of the background tile map. By rapidly rewriting the tile characteristics in the background memory while keeping the screen scrolling, they tricked our eyes into seeing a giant, independently moving, animated alien organism. It's a brilliant structural illusion that allowed for an arcade-perfect encounter on a console with strict hardware limitations. Virgin Games and developer Sims brought Agrabah to life on the Master System in 1994, and it is a masterclass in animation compression. The 16-bit version was famous for its fluid, hand-drawn Disney cel animation, which should have been a complete memory hog for an 8-bit cartridge. To bypass this, the programmers utilised aggressive tile swapping techniques, loading only the necessary animation frames into the VRAM on a frame-by-frame basis as Aladdin moves. The backgrounds use the console's 32 colour capabilities flawlessly, creating gorgeous desert sunsets and bustling streets filled with rich, warm gradients. It plays like a dream, looks like a cartoon, and completely outclasses the choppy, pale NES version in every single department. A side-scrolling beat-em-up needs to do 3 things: keep sprites large, handle multiple enemies, and never slow down. Streets of Rage 2, released in 1993, hits all 3 out of the park. M&M Software completely weaponised the system's video chip, packing the neon-lit urban environments with incredible detail. They avoided the Master System's notorious horizontal sprite flickering by ensuring enemies rarely occupy the exact same horizontal scan lines at the exact same millisecond. Axel and Blaze possess massive movesets, fully functional special attacks, and fluid animations that glide across the screen with zero slowdown. It brought the raw, gritty arcade action vibe of the 16-bit era right down to our 8-bit control pads without dropping a single ounce of its signature cool factor. If you want to talk about pushing an 8-bit processor to its absolute breaking point, you talk about Compil's Power Strike 2 from 1993. This vertical shoot 'em up is a technical miracle. The screen is consistently flooded with hundreds of enemy ships, bullets, massive background structures, and multi-part explosions all at once. Normally, an 8-bit machine would crawl into a single-digit frame rate under this kind of stress, but Compile wrote an incredibly tight, legendary assembly loop that directly manipulates the hardware registers, forcing a locked 50 to 60 frames per second. It's a blindingly fast, flicker-free bullet hell that stands as the ultimate benchmark for what the Master System Z80 processor could achieve when pushed by absolute coding geniuses. Widely regarded as one of the most beautiful 8-bit video games ever constructed, Land of Illusion arrived in 1992 and instantly raised the bar. Sega's internal artists treated the VRAM like a premium canvas. The game features gorgeous, layered backgrounds, animated water tiles, and a brilliant software hack that replicates the pseudo parallax scrolling, making the fairy tale backgrounds move at a different speed than the foreground. Mickey himself has an incredibly expressive, fluidly animated sprite sheet. The developers even implemented complex puzzle elements and swinging physics that shouldn't run this smoothly on basic hardware. It oozes classic Disney charm and remains a definitive visual high watermark for the entire 8-bit generation. Porting the digitised real-world actors of Midway's Mortal Kombat II to an 8-bit grid sounds like a disaster on paper, yet Probe Software delivered absolute gold in 1994. The Master System's superior colour depth is the saviour here. The artist used incredibly clever dithering, blending alternating pixels together to simulate the complex muscle shading and leather textures of Jax, Melina and Shang Tsung. By allocating a massive chunk of cartridge ROM to background tiles, they even managed to retain the atmospheric, moody background stages with minimal compromise. It's dark, it's gritty, and the fact that an 8-bit console is accurately rendering these blood-splattering, digitised fatalities at an acceptable frame rate is a testament to raw assembly optimisation. Sega followed up their success with Mickey by letting Donald Duck take the spotlight in 1993's Deep Duck Trouble, and visually they went completely avant-garde. The cartoon art direction here is staggeringly good, featuring lush, dense jungle structures and brilliant use of the 32 colour palette. But the real jaw-dropper is the underwater segments. The programmers implemented a custom mid-screen palette swap trick that dynamically alters the colour registers on a specific scan line, perfectly simulating the transition into water. Combine that with a subtle distortion effect on the scrolling background to mimic ocean currents, and you get a level of visual sophistication that many 16-bit games struggled to pull off. Developed specifically for the European and Brazilian markets in 1992, Ninja Gaiden is an absolute tour de force of speed and cinematic style. The in-game combat runs at a blistering pace, featuring razor-sharp, highly responsive character animations as Ryu slashes through enemies with 0 frame drops. But where this game truly pushes the system to its limits is in its legendary dramatic cinema cutscenes. The developers squeezed every single drop of memory out of the tarmac to display highly detailed, dramatic anime portraits, lightning flashes and scrolling text frames. It pushed the Master System's narrative delivery to a theatrical level, proving that 8-bit games could feel just as grand and mature as the latest 16-bit releases. (1994's The Lion King released right as the 16-bit era was taking over the world. This late-era European release is an absolute triumph of animation compression. The 16-bit versions were celebrated for using actual Disney character model sheets to create ultra-fluid, lifelike animal movements. Virgin and Disney successfully downscaled those exact complex multi-frame animations directly onto an 8-bit grid. Watching young Simba fluidly pounce, tumble and roll through the vibrantly coloured African savannah is a sight to behold. It stands as a beautiful triumphant farewell to the Master System, showcasing a level of graphical mastery that was a decade in the making. Sega took their road scaling engine to the absolute extreme with 1989's Battle Outrun. This wasn't just a peaceful drive through the countryside, it combined high-speed pseudo 3D road scaling with vehicular combat, forcing you to ram criminal cars off the road. The software engine under the hood is working overtime, dynamically calculating the twisting, undulating highway lines, processing a massive custom sports car sprite, rendering roadside structures and tracking mid-race upgrades simultaneously, all while maintaining an incredibly smooth, fast frame rate. It's an aggressive, action-packed upgrade over the original engine, proving that Sega could squeeze genuine arcade thrill performance out of their 1985 silicon. Sega's direct answer to Konami's Castlevania was 1992's Master of Darkness, and visually it completely stole the crown. The developers expertly leveraged the Master System's 32 colour limits to paint a dark, moody, atmospheric vision of Victorian London. Instead of harsh, basic primary colours, the screen is filled with subtle shades of crimson, deep purples and eerie greys, giving life to dripping stone dungeons, fog-rolling graveyards and candlelit laboratories. The character sprites are cleanly defined, casting beautiful silhouettes against a highly detailed background. It's an absolute masterclass in using colour theory and pixel art shading to evoke genuine horror movie tension on an 8-bit budget. Released in 1993, Sonic Chaos took every aspect learned from the first 8-bit Sonic game and cranked it up to 11. For the first time on the Master System, you could play as Tails, completely flying through levels. But the real technical triumph here is the sheer speed and sprite management. The Master System can easily choke and flicker when too many moving objects line up horizontally. To combat this, Aspect wrote a highly optimised sprite handling routine that dynamically swaps out sprite priority frames. This kept the loops blisteringly fast, the bosses massive and colourful, and the frame rate locked down tight. As a kid, seeing Sonic pull off a fully operational spin dash across these vibrant, neon-soaked zones felt like pure, unadulterated wizardry. To end this list, we go out with a bang with an absolute engineering impossibility. Street Fighter II, released exclusively in Brazil by Tectoy in 1997. Cramming Capcom's massive sprite-heavy arcade phenomenon onto an 8-bit Master System should have been a crime. To make it fit, frames of animation were ruthlessly cut, but look at the sheer size of these character sprites. They are massive, beautifully detailed and instantly recognisable. Tectoy's programmers had to meticulously manage the system's VRAM tiles to redraw these giants on the fly during active combat. Against all physical laws of computing, the game retains the iconic special moves, responsive hitboxes and signature backgrounds. It's a jaw-dropping monument to late 90s optimisation, proving that if you give a Brazilian coder a Z80 processor, they will move mountains. It's great looking back at some of these games and realising what these programmers pulled off. They weren't just coding software, they were staging a literal rebellion against the limitations of 1985 Silicon. They took an 8-bit Z80 processor and forced it to render massive arcade fighting sprites, fully animated 3D dungeons, and fluid cartoon animations that had absolutely no business running on that hardware. While everyone else was looking at the flat colours of the NES, Master System owners were looking at living, breathing arcades in their living rooms. Whether it was Sega's in-house masters pulling off background tile illusions in R-Type, or late era wizards in Brazil refusing to let the console die in the late 90s, the Master System proved that numbers like 8 bits are just a suggestion when you have enough passion, imagination and mastery of assembly code. Now I want to hear from you, which of these Master System games blew your mind the most back in the day? Did you grow up with one of these sleek black and red consoles under your TV, or did you miss out on this 8-bit powerhouse? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this trip down Sega memory lane, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more great video game, movies, top 10 content and much more. Thanks for watching, long live the Master System, and until the next time, Sega! See ya!
Videos and I